I'm Kimberly Griffith and I'm an artist and art historian at the Hugh Lane Gallery, and I'm excited to show you guys how to make your very own fluffy snowflake for today's Zoom project. And it's based on the painting that we looked at earlier by Claude Monet called Lavacourt Under Snow. So we'll take a look at the painting real quick and then get to work on our project. To complete this project, you will need one A4 size sheet of white card, colored pencils, scissors, a pencil, a Pritt stick, and about 4 or 5 cotton balls. Begin with your A4 sheet of white card facing you landscape style. Then fold it in half across the long end. Once you've done that, fold it in half a second time, and then again in half a third time. It might be a bit difficult to fold your card in half at this point, so feel free to use a pencil or other instrument to make sure that your crease is nice and sharp. Unfold your paper now and you should see that you have 8 different sections across your paper. For the next step, you'll want to color each of those 8 sections of your paper a different color using colored pencils that you selected based on the colors that you saw on the snow in Claude Monet's painting. Now that your paper is colored, you can begin cutting. To begin, cut out the 2 stripes on either side of the paper. It's important here that you make sure that you cut out 2 pairs of 2 stripes together. Once you've cut out your 2 pairs of 2 stripes, cut out the remaining 4 stripes individually. So you should have 2 pairs of 2 stripes and then 4 individual stripes. For this step, you'll need your 2 pairs of 2 stripes, your scissors, and a pencil. Begin by folding each of the pairs of 2 stripes in half along the tall end of the paper and then fold them in half again. So you should now have what looks like 2 small squares of white paper. Now you'll take your pencil and lightly draw a line from the crease at the center of each of those folded squares out towards the corners at the bottom and cutting off the corner on the top sides of each of those papers. Once you've done that, take your scissors and cut along the lines you've just drawn. When you're done, you should have what looks like 2 V shapes or chevron shapes. You should now have 8 different V shapes that are differently colored, and these will be the tips of your snowflake. Next up, you'll want to prepare your cotton balls, which will act as the fluffy top part of your snowflake. To do this, first take your individual cotton ball, and you should be able to sort of unravel it so that each of the cotton balls becomes instead a long strip of cotton. Now I'm going to gently pull my cotton apart even further so that it's nice and thin and that the color of my snowflake will show through it. First, I'm going to take each of those strips of cotton that I just made and attempt to sort of tear them in half so that there's 2 thinner strips for each one strip of cotton. I can then take each of those strips and very, very gently, using just the tips of my fingers, slowly work them apart so that the cotton is very thinly spread. Each of these strips should ideally be about the same width as the long strips that you cut out from your colored paper. You'll want to have 4 total of these longer strips of cotton to match the 4 colored strips of paper that you created earlier. Next up, I'm going to want to make 8 smaller sized bits of pulled out cotton, and these will go across those V-shaped tips of the snowflake that we made in the previous step. So I'm going to try to pull apart my cotton here so that it's nice and thin like the strips that I just made, but the length of each of these strips should be about half of the size of my longer strip. And again, I'll want to have 8 of those total when I'm done. And don't worry about having your cotton strips and smaller pieces perfect. It's okay if they're not totally perfect squares or strips, because you can fix that later. Now I'm going to assemble the base of my snowflake using the 4 strips of paper that I cut out earlier, my 8 V's of paper that I cut out, and my Pritt stick. I'll make an X shape using 2 of the strips of paper and glue those together, and then I'll make a T shape using the other 2 strips of paper and glue those 2 together. Once I have my X and my T shape, I can glue the X shape on top of the T shape so that it makes a basic asterisk or snowflake shape. Finally, I'll take my 8 V's of paper and glue one on the tip of each of my strips of paper so that I have my completed snowflake shape. Now you're ready to cover your snowflake with cotton. First, make sure that you have a good thick layer of Pritt stick across the entirety of the snowflake. Then, making sure that your hands are clean and not sticky, begin laying your strips of cotton across the snowflake. You want to make sure that you get the snowflake covered in cotton as quickly as possible before the glue dries. And then after that, you can make slight adjustments to the placement of the cotton by pushing it down with your fingers and working it into place on your snowflake so that's the way you want it to be. Congratulations, your fluffy snowflake is now complete.